Geology. This is Mini Geology Radio Show. Welcome everybody here from Houston, the beautiful Montrose headquarters of KPFT HD2 channel. This is Daniel Minizini, your inquisitive geologist, and you can write me at minigeology@gmail.com. And you can listen to this program at the YouTube channel minigeology.com. Today we are going to interview Professor Riccardi. Professor Riccardi is a stratigrapher living in Argentina, close to Buenos Aires, and he is one of the most expert stratigraphy of the Southern Hemisphere. He has been teaching for 50 years, and I would like to share with you his views on this discipline and expose his life to show to you what is the mindset of this kind of professionals. This is just an example that I bring in about Professor Riccardi, but it is very important for all of us to understand what is the human side of the professors or the professionals related to geology. This is what I bring to you today. So you're going to listen to a pre-recorded interview that I made with Professor Riccardi in a bar, drinking a coffee. So you're going to listen to the background sounds of the Argentinian cafes. And here we go. I'm going to put you now directly in touch with Professor Riccardi. All right.
Yeah,
so,
that's good.
Good morning, Alberto Riccardi.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Fine, thank you.
It's going fine?
Yeah, going well, yeah.
It is a pleasure to be here in the Southern Hemisphere talking with one of the most important stratigraphers in this hemisphere. And not only.
Wow, too much, anyway.
So, dear Alberto, you are a professor, a researcher.
Yeah.
You have been president of several associations.
Yeah.
Do you feel more a professor or a researcher?
I feel more a researcher, yes, more than a professor.
Do you invest most of your time teaching or researching?
I did both things, yes, but I was always more interested in research than in teaching, yes.
But you have been teaching for a long time.
I have been teaching since I was 25, 26 years old. I am now 76 years old. It means I have been teaching for over 50 years. A long time.
So in your career, did you choose how much to teach, how much to do research? Or was something that was imposed by your position?
No, well, I became teacher, as I said, when I was 25, 26 years old, and at that time I started teaching paleontology. It's very strange because when I came to La Plata University, my idea was to be an oil geologist. I mean, I came from the southern part of the country, of Argentina, and I was living when I was a child in a place where there are quite large oil fields in the area. And my idea was to study geology in order to go back there to work in oil geology. But when I came here, I became involved I was very much interested in paleontology. And at the end, when I got my graduate degree, I decided to do also my PhD. And in order to do that, I have to stay here, and I was sent to southern Patagonia to study the stratigraphy, one area where there are a lot of ammonites. And I was interested in those ammonites. And also at the same time arrived here in Argentina a geologist from Canada, that was Dr. Westerman, that was professor at McMaster University. And he invited me, we were in the field together. I showed him some sections in the Jurassic of Western Argentina, and after that he invited me to go to Canada to work with him. And then I went to Canada. Instead of going to the oil fields in southern Patagonia, I got my PhD, and I went to Canada, and I stayed 2 years in Canada with a postdoc, as a postdoc there. And since then, at that time, I began working in paleontology, mainly in ammonites and in the Jurassic and Cretaceous. The Jurassic of Western Argentina and Cretaceous of Southern Patagonia. These are my two main fields in paleontology.
Why didn't you go back to the idea of becoming a geologist of the oil and gas industry?
Why?
Yeah, you never...
No. At that time, I was almost I did that, because when I finished my first degree, that would be like a bachelor or a master, I went to YPF, that is the state oil company here, and they say, well, you can work for us. But the main point was that I wanted to do my PhD, and they didn't have facilities for that at that time. And then I asked my father, and my father told me, well, I think you should finish your studies. And the way to finish your studies is to do your PhD. And then I stayed here, and I became involved in my thesis in southern Patagonia. I met this paleontologist, this Canadian guy, Westerman, and I never went back to oil geology at all. But in some way, I became involved with oil geology because the main oil fields in Argentina are in western Argentina and are related to the Jurassic. And I was working on ammonites of the Jurassic. That means that all the collections made by the oil geologists in the field in western Argentina were sent to me to study. And I did all the stratigraphy, the biostratigraphy for them. And
in fact, I know that you had a relationship with YPF, and so you represent the person who created a link between academia and industry, especially since the 70s, I think. Is that right?
Yes, in some way, because what happened at that time was that YPF had a lot of field geologists. Like, for instance, one was Juliana. I don't know if you know his name. He was the first one. Yeah, Juliana was younger than I am at that time. But he studied also here in La Plata. And he went to the field, and he was interested in knowing where he was in stratigraphy, you know. And he started to ask me, and he invited me to go to the field, and I went to the field in western Argentina, and we were together in the field. And then we were together, and he was interested in knowing what is ammonite, what is the age of this level, and all these type of things. You know? And in that way I became involved with him. And after him, came another field geologist that was Gulisano. You know him probably. But Gulisano did better, because Gulisano organized at that time a complete research project on the Jurassic of Western Argentina. And he learned how to collect ammonites. He asked me the best way to collect all the ammonites, and he did a tremendous job. And he collected thousands of ammonites, and he sent all this material to La Plata, and identified all that material for him, and he did all the stratigraphy, the chronostratigraphy of Western Argentina that he still used.
In Gulisano, where was he working at that time? Gulisano.
Yes.
Where was he working? At YPF?
Yes, he was working in YPF in the field. Yes, he was a field geologist at that time.
So, was it normal or was it something strange to have this collaboration between academia, you?
No,
and
he came directly to
YPF
me and
industry?
he asked me if I could help him to identify the material. And when I said yes, we can do that, he organized that through YPF and the university, and the material was sent from YPF to the university, and the material was given to me, and I studied the material. And I sent the results to him. And in some occasions I went to the field with him, and we worked together in the field collecting material and doing things.
In the 70s, 80s?
That was mainly in the 80s. In the 80s, yes.
And were you one of the few academics collaborating with YPF, or other academics they had the same relationship with YPF?
At that time, probably I was the first. Later on, there are other people that are working in other fields, for instance, in sedimentology, micropaleontology, and things like that.
What do you think about the relationship between academia and industry? Is that something that is beneficial for?
Yes, I think it's very beneficial. This. And I learned a lot of things, and I got a lot of material that otherwise would have been impossible to receive. Because, for instance, Gulisano at that time, he did, I think, more than 100 sections in Western Argentina. And all the material, like, he spent 6 months in the field. I can't spend 6 months in the field, being here at the university. If I can go to the field 20 days, 1 month, or 2 months, no more per year. But he spent most of the year in the field, and he collected a lot of materials, and the material did all the sections. And he had the logistics necessary to do that, because they have people helping them in the field. They're a very good organization. And that means that I could get all the results from the field work and do the laboratory work at the university. And then they will receive the results of what I did. And this is a very good combination. And with Gulisano, we had a very good relationship. We couldn't do that with Juliana, because at that time the mechanism was not well organized. No? This means that Juliana, the only thing he could do at that time is he could send some material to me, but not through the organization. This means that was not done through YPF and the university. When Gulisano was in charge, he could organize all that through the organization, through the YPF and through the university. And that was a better arrangement in some way.
Do you think that there should be more or better relationship between industry and academia these years now in Argentina?
I think in some way this has been lost, because the problem is that YPF at that time was a state-owned company, and later on became private company. Was a change in the organization of YPF, and most of this connection that was between YPF and the university was lost. And now this means. The other day I was here in ITech, you call yes, the other day I was there, because they have some cores there, and they have some ammonites in the core, and they wanted to know what all these ammonites were. And I went to see them, I said, well, you could send the material to me, and I identified the material, but it's not organized in the way it was. It should be organized in that way, but it's not now so well organized.
There are a lot of private companies around the world that they collaborate with universities, especially because universities, they need some budget.
Claro. Yes, true. That's the important thing. I think it's beneficial, and this should be improved, this type of relationship between universities and the private industry. I think it will be good for both, for the university and for the private companies. Because, for instance, an oil company cannot afford to have a paleontologist working all the time, working on ammonite, for instance, for them only. This means, and in order to work on ammonites, you have to do research. This means a thing that you need to be at the university, you have to need a good library, you need a lot of things, and this only can be done in a university usually, this type of research. And you can take, when you are at the university, some of your time to do this type of work for a private oil company, for instance. And you get the benefit of that, because, for instance, since that time, I have huge collections of ammonite because I have to return most of the material to the oil company, because that was to YPF, because this YPF was the owner of those collections, because they collected them. But what I did at that time was to take some specimens, as you say, some key in a section, key fossils, no? And I preserve them, just in order to be able to review things if the people from YPF needed that. For instance, I send a report, and Gulisano, for instance, I asked Gulisano how that fits with your observations in the field. And Gulisano could tell me, well, it's okay, all this is fine, but I would like to know more about this level. And in order to do that, I have to have the material. Then I returned most of the material to YPF, but I kept all the key ammonites, or some of them, and I could review if they needed some more information. And I have all that material. This means that when I need material in order to do a systematic study that has nothing to do with industry, but improves the knowledge of the ammonites, I have material to do that. And that was given to me through the oil companies like YPF.
You are a stratigrapher, a biostratigrapher, and what do you think about the profession of the biostratigrapher? Do you see it as a profession that is disappearing? There are very few of these professional figures in the oil and gas companies. What's the status of the discipline?
I think there has been a change in the last decades in the working in geology, and everything has become more theoretical. And the people today like to sit in front of a computer, and work with a computer. That means that the field is very far away, something strange, and they like more to play with a computer with information that was collected previously, or with some new information that is not necessarily very accurate. This is the situation today. And then when you work in stratigraphy, you have to go to the field. You have to collect the material. You have to be sure that the material you get, where it comes from, what level it comes from. And that all you can work out a good stratigraphy. And the problem today is that there are not too many paleontologists in the world working in fossils that are important stratigraphically. For instance, here in Argentina you have a lot of paleontologists working in dinosaurs, for instance. But dinosaurs are not important for stratigraphy, When you have to do a good biostratigraphy that is important for an oil company, you have to work, for instance, with ammonites that are very precise stratigraphically. This means that you can work out a good stratigraphy. For instance, the people in YPF, they did all the work in the field. But all this information was used for underground. This means they could use that information when they collect or they did a drill in Western Argentina, they could work out how was the stratigraphy below what you see on the surface. And in that sense, it's very important the work of the paleontologists working, for instance, in ammonites or working in micropaleontology also, depends what type of microfossils. Today is more complex because today you get more relationship. For instance, now we are working with a team in England that they are mainly sedimentologists and are mainly working in geochemistry. And what they are doing is trying to, in the same section, if they can collect, for instance, a sample that can be dated in absolute dates, they do that. And the other thing that they do is to work out also how the isotopes change through the section. And this is related to the ammonites, to the stratigraphy done by the ammonites. And then you get a more precise stratigraphy. I just finished a paper on the Triassic-Jurassic boundary. Here we found a section in Western Argentina. Until the end of the 80s, it was not known marine Triassic in Argentina. I mean, the beginning of the marine Mesozoic in Argentina was considered to be Cinemurian at that time. And I went with a group of people to Western Argentina, and we discovered a section that takes all the Etangena Cinemurian, the lower part of the Jurassic, and the uppermost part of the Triassic. It's a very good section that is very rare in the world to find the transition, marine transition, between the Triassic and the Jurassic. And we found that. And I finished just now a work on the cephalopods, on the ammonites in that section. And I could make a good stratigraphy on that and to decide, well, the boundary between the Triassic and the Jurassic is between these 10 meters. But these people, they did a work on the isotopes in the same section. And they related these isotopes, the curves, with works done in Peru and in the United States.
So
and then the guy that is doing that told me, well, within these 10 meters, probably, according to the comparison with the other sections, the boundary is in the uppermost part. And this gives that we can now say that the boundary is within 1 meter in the same section. You see?
So do you think that the biostratigraphers now as a profession, they should integrate more their studies with other disciplines like inorganic geochemistry?
Yes, sure, for sure. Another thing that we did, for instance, is to in the same section, for instance, in Chacay-Melewe, that is a very important section in Western Argentina, you have about 1,700 meters going from the lower Jurassic to almost the upper Jurassic to the Oxfordian, more or less continuous. And in that section that is full of ammonites, you have some ash layers that can be dated and we relate both things. And then now in that section we can say, well, the boundary, for instance, between the Battonian and Calovian, given by ammonites, is dated with that age exactly. And this can be used anywhere in the world.
So, in other words, you suggest to integrate geochronology with biostratigraphy, with inorganic geochemistry. What would you suggest to a student approaching biostratigraphy right now? Where should they focus on? Only on the biostratigraphy, or change the method of studying the stratigraphy in general?
Well, I think both things can be done, and both things are important. But the thing is, it depends on your background. For instance, I am a geologist. And I became interested in paleontology because I think that paleontology, or some parts of paleontology, I use for biostratigraphy. And that means that is the reason I do really biostratigraphy. And if you ask me, what are you? I would say I'm a biostratigrapher, not a paleontologist, even if I work in paleontology. That's the main point. But today, for instance, here in La Plata, there are a lot of people that they are paleontologists, work in paleontology. And they have a different background. Because when you become involved a lot in paleontology, you become to be more interested in things that are more related to the past of the organism, and to say, well, what happened with this extinction, and what happened with the diversity of organisms through time, and things like that. That is a different thing. Because even if it's important for biostratigraphy, it's not directly biostratigraphy. And you end up doing other things that are not directly related to biostratigraphy. But this is because of your background. For instance, here in La Plata, the people that you can approach paleontology from two different directions. You can be involved in paleontology being a biologist or being a geologist. If you become involved in paleontology being a geologist, you have a tendency to be a biostratigrapher and to use the fossils for biostratigraphy. But your background is biology. You have a tendency to be involved in other matters that are related more to biology than to stratigraphy. It's a completely different approach. Here in La Plata, for instance, there are a lot of people working that the background is biology, and they have a tendency to work more, for instance, in vertebrate paleontology and or paleobotany, for instance. But the ones that come from geology are more involved with invertebrate paleontology, because the invertebrates, some of the invertebrates, are more useful for stratigraphy, then become biostratigraphers.
How many students do you have today, or lately? How many students per year that study biostratigraphy?
Well, directly they are not people studying biostratigraphy. What you have are people who studying geology or studying biology, that's it. And they do for instance, they take a course in paleontology. Here in La Plata, paleontology in geology is taken in the second year. And when they arrive to the end of the fifth year, they are more interested in other things than in paleontology. Then it's not common that they become biostratigraphers.
And is it in the last decades, in the last 3 decades that you have been teaching, if not 4 decades, have you seen the number of students dedicated to biostratigraphy when they finish increasing or decreasing?
I would say that it's decreasing. Yes, I don't think it is decreasing yet.
How many students did you have in all your career? Tens?
Well, I had more or less between 10 and 12 PhD students. Yeah.
What do you think the students they think about you as a professor?
It's difficult to say. I used to be, when I was younger, they used to say that I was too tough. That was
In which sense tough? Did you pretend too much?
Well, I am in some way too rigid, not very soft in teaching and in demands. I think that I ask too much from the students. That's the point. And today I don't have any more students at all. And one of the reasons I don't have, in the last maybe 10-15 years, I didn't have more students. And one of the reasons is that in order to have students, you have to devote to them a lot of time. And I don't have that time. Because in the last 10 years or 15 years, I thought that I should devote my time to finish things that I had in my hands for many years before I disappeared.
So you think that you were tougher when you were younger, and then with aging you became softer with the students?
No, I would say softer, but I would say more comprehensive, more understanding more the situation or whatever. I try to help a lot the students I have in many ways. Even some of them, for instance, I push them a lot in order to finish their PhD, because I think that to be a professor is not only to teach them, but to give them the confidence to do things and to finish things. And sometimes your student knows more about what he's doing than you know about that, about the subject, the specific subject they are working on. But sometimes they lack the confidence to say, well, this is important what I am doing, and this is enough to finish or whatever. And for that is important the director, the professor, because you have to say, no, this what you have there is really important, and with that you should finish or whatever, and you give them the confidence that sometimes they lack.
So that would be the reason why you said you were very strict with the students, because you want them to understand this very important thing. You want them to understand what was important, and so you were challenging them in order to make them confident in what they were doing.
Yes, that could be a situation. Yes, this could be, yes. And the other thing is that I have students not only in my own field, but in other fields of paleontology. I have doing PhD in subjects that are not I am not expert on those subjects. For instance, I had a student in micropaleontology, and I am not a micropaleontologist. Even I did 1 or 2 papers on micropaleontology, but I am not a micropaleontologist. But, for instance, that person, when she finished, or was finishing her thesis, she thought that was not enough, and came to me and said, well, it's not enough, I think I should have more, or whatever. I said, no, I think it's enough. Because I had the knowledge to say, well, this is enough. This is enough for the knowledge we have here in Argentina. I told them, this is important because this, and this. This you can give from this type of information or this type of concept. You can give to them when you know and you are really a professor. And they don't know, because if you are 25 years old, maybe you think what you have is not enough or is not good enough. But the professor should know if it's good enough or not.
So how would you describe your best students? What do they need to have in order to be a very good student? And students that are listening to a professor where they have maybe devotion and they can't really talk with them at the same level, what would you tell them?
I think one important thing, I believe that people in general, the level of intelligence of people is more or less similar. You have very clever people, and some that are not clever enough, but these are, I would say, a minor proportion of people. Most of the people is in the middle in intelligence. But what you need really to do things is drive. You need character and to know what you want and to work for that. And for that it's important to work and decision. This is the most important thing. This is in everything, in every profession, in whatever you go. That is what really is important.
So will, motivation,
yes,
to have an ego defined.
Yes.
That's
the important thing. When you want to do things in the life, doesn't matter what you do, but you need is that motivation and drive and work very hard. That's the important thing.
Have you seen a change in the students, in their character, in their personality in these last years that you have been working with them? Is there a generational change?
I think that, no, I wouldn't say so. The students are always the same. You have all kinds of students. I mean, here in La Plata, for instance, you have a group for years. There is 10% that are very good, are excellent. And you have 10% that's very bad. And you have an 80% that are in the middle, you see? Yeah, and I've always been in that way, situation. I don't think that changed at all.
I have a couple of questions on your relationship with researchers. I would like to know that you have such a broad experience in the different sub-disciplines of geology. Did you have a special link with some disciplines? Is it easier?
With what?
Is it easier or more difficult to collaborate with some experts that are from different disciplines, like geophysicists or structural geologists, sedimentologists? Do you see some link with some of these sub-disciplines, or is roughly the same?
I don't think that depends on the disciplines. I think that depends on the people. It means you can find people with which you can relate very easily in any profession. And you can find people that it's very difficult to relate with them in any profession. It means that depends. It's not a matter of the profession or the discipline, but a matter of personalities. Sometimes you find people that is working exactly in the same thing you are doing, and you don't have a good relationship because it's a matter of the personality you have in front of you. And sometimes you have a very good relationship. It's not related to the discipline.
A question about publishing papers.
Yeah.
When do you think is the right moment to publish a paper? What is the boundary conditions that you need to decide this is the moment where I'm going to write and I'm going to give to the community this data or this thought?
Well, when I work, when I am doing research, I try to do my best. And this means that I don't care about the time. I work on that subject and I try to finish and complete in the best way I can. And when I do it, I have the idea that this is the best thing I could do, it's finished. Then I publish.
You are a perfectionist.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. For instance, when I was, because I am not interested in paleontology and in geology, I am interested in history of science, in history of geology, and at some point when I was 30 years old, something like that, I said, well, what I am doing here, why I am working in geology, what is the relationship of geology with other disciplines? Why? What's the reason? What is scientific in geology and what's not scientific in geology? What's the relationship? And then I started to read on that subject, and I spent something like 4 or 5 years reading on that subject. And when I got an idea, or what I thought that was a clear idea on that, I published a paper that is on philosophy of geology. And the title of the paper was Geology. Speculation, proto-science, or science? Question mark. And the paper answers that question. And that was the conclusion of my study. But I did that for myself. And when I got an idea, what I thought that was the answer to that, I published it because I said maybe it could be used by other people.
I think that this subject of philosophy of geology or ethics on publication and so forth is something that should be taught to the students. And I don't think that the students, they have professors or the environment that teaches them this very important subject, which is a pillar of your existence as a professional.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is not usually taught in the university anywhere, but nobody taught me that. I mean, when I finished my studies, I'm saying in the 70s I did that. I was 30 years old. I mean, at that time I had finished my doctorate, I finished my postdoctorate, and I came back to Argentina, and I thought about that. And then, because of that, I studied the subject, and I gave an answer to that. And when I read that, this is probably the only paper written in Spanish here in Argentina, and probably in the world, on that subject, the one I wrote in 1977. One of the few in the world, because if you look at the literature, even in English, there are not too many written on that one.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons I think I'm going to translate that into English, by the way.
You definitely should. I think there is a special GSI publication for the 125th anniversary, which is titled "The Fabric of Geology."
Yeah. I use that when I wrote that paper. That was just published, that paper. And
okay. You are talking about the one written for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
They or something similar. They redid
75th anniversary of the GSA. Yeah.
Exactly. Now they redid it 50 years later.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, but anyway, when I was writing that, I used that book. And I used also, Simpson, well, I used a lot of paper of him because he wrote on that subject. And when I finished my paper, by the way, I sent that to Simpson, asking for his advice, saying, what do you think about this paper?
Yes.
And not only to Simpson, but I sent that to Bunge. You know Bunge? Mario Bunge? Well, I sent that also to Mario Bunge. And both of them answered me. And Simpson told me it's a very good paper, he told me. And Bunge said the same. Bunge added something. He said to me, you should learn something more about the logic of, I don't remember exactly the terms he used, no? But he thought and told me, you should follow with the subject. But I never did, because I did that to answer my own questions. And when I thought I had the answer, I finished that.
But you said you wrote it in Spanish. You wrote the paper in Spanish. But in these two other researchers, they could read Spanish?
Yeah, well, Bunge was Argentinian, and Simpson was here in Argentina, and I think he knew enough Spanish to read that.
I see. Well, now that we are talking about the philosophy of your own life, what do you think is the legacy, your legacy, that you leave behind for the science of geology?
Well, I did a lot of things in biostratigraphy, mainly here in the Jurassic of Argentina and the Cretaceous of Argentina, and there are a lot of papers written on ammonites, and this is a legacy in some way. And I am leaving also a legacy on the history of geology, and especially here in Argentina, because I wrote many things on people from here, from Argentina, on geology from Argentina, even from Argentina. I wrote about Fossa Mancini, for instance, about Frenguelli, that was another Italian that was here in Argentina, about different people I have written on them. And this is a legacy, because what I try to convey to the people is what were the reasons for that people to do what they did. And this is, in some ways, a legacy, because I try to go behind the people and behind their work, and to find the reasons for what they did. For instance, here was an Italian that was Frenguelli, that was director of the museum, and he was a medical doctor, but he was very much interested in geology. And he did a tremendous work here in Argentina on the upper Cenozoic, of the stratigraphy of the upper Cenozoic. And for that he used microfossils, he used diatoms. And in order to do that, when you read his papers, you see what he did. He worked in many different things, because he worked in diatoms, he did stratigraphy, and all looked disconnected. But they were not disconnected, because he had a main purpose. And to do that, he thought that diatoms were very good to do the stratigraphy of the upper Cenozoic. And in order to study those diatoms that were fossils in some way, he studied the actual diatoms, because he wanted to know the environments of the actual diatoms and use that for the fossils. They were not disconnected at all. It was all pointing to the same end. But you have to grasp that, because if you look superficially to his work, you say, well, he was working in many different things, what he was doing, because, and I try to look behind what was the reason for what he was doing.
So you have been for a long time a focal point for the globally for the stratigraphy of the Jurassic. What do you think that made you special in order to become the global focal point for this specific stratigraphy?
Well, the point is that in paleontology is global. In order to understand the fossils in one place, you have to know what's going on in the world, because are not isolated. The fossils here, like the organisms, are part.
No, but I mean that you are the global focal point. Like everybody's looking at you. When somebody talks about the Jurassic,
yeah,
they think about you. So I'm wondering why you became that. What was your merit in becoming that focal point?
Well, one of the reasons is that here in Argentina there are not too many people working on that. This means that you, in some way, you are a reference for the people in other parts of the world, because I did a lot of things here in Argentina, and if they want to know something, for instance, about Jurassic ammonite here in Argentina, they have to go to my work. And this gives you an importance at the global level, because your work becomes important when they want to know what's going on here and how that is related to that part of the world. Because when I work with something here, I don't take that isolated. I try to relate that to fossils from other parts of the world. And I use, in general, for instance, I did this now on the Jurassic boundary. When I did that, the fossils I studied there, I analyzed them from a global point of view. And I don't only talk about the fossils here, I talk about the fossils everywhere on that. And that, for other people, I give my opinions. I say, well, what somebody did, I don't know, in the United States or in another part of the world, but I don't think it's correct, or I think it's correct, or whatever. And this, look into that from here, and from the fossils I have here, and I analyze and compare what they did in other parts of the world. And that gives a global approach.
So you're a man of science, passion, rigor, and philosophy. Who is following you? Who is following you? Who is going to repeat or enhance and ameliorate what you have already done?
You never know. You never know. Maybe who is going to follow you is just behind you, or is 50 years behind you, or 100 years behind you. You never know.
But do you think that you have somebody already that you know that they exist and they can do something similar?
No, I don't have that feeling. No, at all. But I think that the world... I used to read a book, a very interesting book of one person that was, well, I don't want to go on that, but One person was one day looking, and they told him he was living in a very close society, you know, very close society, and he was given a position and to have to do a work, a specific work, because he was forced to do that. It was an authoritarian society. And the guy wasn't happy with that because he was thinking another thing. And one day he said, well, there is a criminal. We are going to kill the criminal because the criminal is here. And he was taken to that place and he was looking to the criminal. And he thought that was going to find a person that was really a criminal. And what he saw was a person standing there with a very good face, a very nice guy, very old, looking to the people there. He didn't look like a criminal. And all of a sudden, that guy looked to him, directly to him, and he crossed the view, the sides. And he thought that was a message. And he got the message. And he left the place. And he left that society and went to live in the wild because he didn't want to be there. But he got the message. That means you never know who is going to get the message. That's my idea. And the message maybe can be close to you and get the message. Can be later on. You never know.
Who was that man? Who was that man that you were talking about?
Well, usually that the book is the Fountainhead, written by Ayn Rand. You know?
No, I don't.
You should look into that.
All right.
Ayn Rand was a woman that of Russian origin that was into the United States and wrote some very interesting books. One of those, the first was this Fountainhead, he's the defender of the individual against closed societies and all this type of thing. I am also a defender of that. For instance, I am a very follower in some way, and I believe it's correct and it's right of Popper, the open society and ceremony. This reflects my view of many things.
I see. Thank you very much for talking with us and to sharing all of your knowledge and passion and views with the entire community.
Oh, we could talk for hours.
Thank you so much, Alberto Riccardi. Bye. This was a mini geology radio show. This is Daniel Minisini, your inquisitive geologist. You can listen to this interview again in the YouTube channel minigeology.com, M-I-N-I geology.com. And you can write me at minigeology@gmail.com to ask for more interviews or more topics to be developed in this radio program, which is aired here from the heart of Montrose neighborhood in Houston, Texas. That's all for now. Thank you very much to everybody, and bye.